Alright, so this is shed 30 and it's normally used for the land team, but we've sectioned off a little part of it to grow the mushrooms. We've got this room which I'm calling the lab, mainly because it's got the lamina flow hood. Now this was left over from the old horticultural research station, so we've managed to reclaim it, get it fixed up so we can use it for mushrooms, but also other, anything that needs a sterile environment. So this is the lab. Next door we've got the inoculation room where the substrate sits for a couple of weeks, which I'll show you in a minute, and then we've got the grow room over the back there to grow all the mushrooms. This is just a hobby. I've been studying mushrooms for about 3 or 4 years now. I like everything about foraging to identifying to photos to growing, everything about them I think is just mystical and quite amazing to the process. So fundamentally there's 3 stages to growing mushrooms. One is preparing and inoculating the substrate, which I'm doing with sawdust in a pressure cooker. Once that's sterile, I'll inoculate it with some mushroom spawn that I buy from Aussie mushroom suppliers. Plug for them, they're a brilliant company. And then once it's inoculated, they go into the grow room for about 2 weeks, and then the third part is obviously putting them in the fruiting room and harvesting the fruit. So you can do each part yourself, or you can jump to just particular parts. If you just want the fruit, you can buy those pre-made kits that you get from Bunnings or from Aussie Mushroom Supply or Life Cycle, there's a few of them, and just get the mushrooms, or you can take control of the whole process by taking your substrate, inoculating it, and then growing right through. Alright, so when you're sterilising the substrate, so this is just sawdust and it's just a good old standard pressure cooker. It needs to be at 15 psi for about 2 hours. So this is the first time I'm opening it. It will be a bit hot still. And these are the bags. So I'm going to take these bags and put them in the flow hood to cool down. And these are completely sterile. Now the problem with it being completely sterile is it's very prone to contamination at this stage. It's the most vulnerable part. So this is sawdust, which I've mixed back with soy hulls, which is normally used for cattle feed, horse feed. I can normally get about 6 bags in here. And then I'm also sterilising some normal grain to make my own seed, mushroom seed basically. So I'll take the existing mushroom seed, inoculate this, and then use that to inoculate more sawdust or straw. So the idea is that if I can propagate my own seed, then I can reduce the overall costs of growing mushrooms. Okay, so this is the inoculation room. The bags will stay in here for a couple of weeks, but come and have a look. So the first one's here. So I've inoculated those on the 11th of July, and you can see the mushrooms, mycelium, starting to colonise in different states. So you can see it branching out from that seed. So these are all colonising nicely. Now these are some that I've done a little while ago that are almost ready for fruiting. So this was done the 31st of May, and that's pretty much completely colonised. So the next step is to move that into the fruiting chamber.
What do you mean by colonised?
So the mycelium, or the mushroom roots, take over all the material. The mushrooms are sometimes described as an inverted human, where we've got our stomach on the inside and we've got all the enzymes that break it down, whereas mushrooms have their stomach on the outside. They extrude a protein which breaks down the material to then go back in to create the fruit and the spores. So these are all colonising. I've got big bags, little bags, different substrates. I'm playing around with different recipes to see what works best. So these are all staying here for a couple of weeks.
Cool.
So there's two main ways of growing mushrooms, either in the bags, which I don't really like because they're single-use plastics, or the other way with some types of mushrooms you can grow them in buckets. So these have got holes drilled in them. I've got some pasteurised straw, which I use a lime for. I inoculate it, and it will stay in here for a couple of weeks, depending on the temperature. Before I move them to the fruiting chamber, the mushrooms will grow out of those holes once I remove the tape. So when working with mushrooms, it's really good to keep as sterile environment as possible. So if I'm handling the mushrooms, I always use, that's just isopropyl. And here, we've got
Oh wow.
a bag of, these are blue oysters or elms, I can't quite remember. But these are ready to harvest. I've left them here. They're a little bit older now because they're turning up at the edges, but I left them here just for this video. So
That's awesome.
you might
Thank
be able to
you.
take some of those home. This is some yellow oysters. Again, they're getting a little bit old, and you can see you've got the fungus gnats, which fruit flies basically. They're attracted to the yellow, so I've got the yellow sticky trap up here to try and keep those low.
Wow.
And then we got gifted, a village member's friends got gifted this old lion's mane. So this is where you can buy a pre-made package. And this one was lion's mane, and that's the mushroom growing there, which is pretty much ready to harvest. And you can see this block is getting old. It's got some wild fungi and stuff, which really shouldn't be in here. It's a clean environment. And then thirdly are the buckets down there with some pink oysters growing up the side. So this shed is normally a hydroponics shed, so it's all not insulated, but it's got the reflective coating. It's got beams across the top for the lights. That's just a blue LED, and you can hear the humidifier has just kicked in. I've got it on a sensor, so it will keep it about 85% relative humidity. So that's dropped down to 76, so the humidifier has kicked in. The humidifier is just made up of a box with a pond fogger that you normally use for landscaping. It triggers it, it creates the mist, and I've got a fan that blows that mist in. And that will now boost it up to 85% and turn off.
Cool.
The lights are on 12 hours on, 12 hours off, and I've also got an extra fan to blow the excess carbon dioxide out. The mushrooms are growing, they produce a lot of carbon dioxide, which are not good. You get long, spindly mushrooms, so you need to flush that out periodically. So I've got a separate fan for that. These are ready to harvest, so I would pick those off when there's enough, put them in a brown paper bag, and they get gobbled up by the village members pretty quickly. I'm certainly selling more than I can produce at the moment. So we started off, we did a course. One of our village members organised a guy to come and do a day-long course where he sort of taught us more about mushrooms, and we made some oyster mushrooms in a plastic bag. And really it was just, I think that ignited my passion and just went from there. Did a lot of research and eventually came across a company called the National Mushroom Network, who offered the kits, so you could buy just the family unit, which is where I started, right up to cafe size with small shed to do hundreds of kilos a week to really sell to cafes and whatnot. They've been a great learning resource. They also supply a lot of the bags that we use and some other things like that. So that really gave it a good kick, and then from that sort of known quantity that what works, I've just expanded on that and sort of adjusted different things to suit the particular operations here. So the family kit is just a shed, probably 2 meters by 1.5 meters by 1/2 meter deep, something you'd probably put your bikes or your toys or something in. It was just modified slightly, so you have just a normal home humidifier on a timer with a fan to push the carbon dioxide out and give it fresh air. And that was basically it. It had some shelving units, and that was enough. If you bought the bags from another provider, you could just get the bags, cut them open, and then eat the mushrooms. But I wanted to take more control of the whole process, so upgraded to the new shed to get more, and then also the laminar flow hood and inoculate my own substrates. Small scale family, I mean, you can buy those pre-made kits. I wouldn't recommend places like Bunnings. I think you sort of get hit and miss with the quality of those. But if you were to buy those kits from Aussie Mushroom Supply or Life Cycle, one of those people, you could probably get, they're about $40–50 a kit, and you could put that in your laundry or your bathroom and just mist it every now and again, and the mushrooms will come up, and you can start very easily from that. If you wanted to step up, then it's going to that model, that sort of arrangement that I said before with the shed and the humidifier, and that will allow you to do a couple of kilos a week, depending on the temperature and whatnot. And for that shed and the shelving units and all the rest of it, you're probably talking $500–600. And then the bags, to buy them, a pack of 12 will cost about $150–200. And then you get variable amounts of mushrooms on those. So it's far more economical if you can learn to inoculate your own substrate, and you don't need a laminar flow hood for that. You can do what they call a still air box, where you get a normal plastic box from Bunnings, you cut some holes in it for your hands, and you do all your work in there, and that just minimizes the airflow and the risk of contamination. So you can just do that. So you just incrementally change the processes, step up, and you get more complicated as you learn more, but also reducing your costs so you can get more food for bang for buck. Another way of growing mushrooms, which takes a lot longer, which I think produces nicer mushrooms, is actually inoculating logs, like you to mimic more what happens out in the real world. So there's a few of us in the Ecovillage that whenever we come across a tree that's been felled, then we try and grab the logs. And what happens here is we drill little holes in, and we use an inoculated mushroom dowel. We whack it in, and then we cover it with a bit of soy wax just to keep the contaminants out. And it takes about a year for the mushrooms then to take over this entire log and then start fruiting. So these ones here are turkey tail. Turkey tail is more of a medicinal mushroom that you have in your tea. You don't really eat it, it's very leathery. But we've done this with shiitakes and lion's mane as well. So this is, each year if we can do 30, 40, 50 logs, then you just increase. Once this has started fruiting, it will fruit for 3 to 5 years until it's used up all the wood. So one thing I've seen more and more online is people making these logs and then selling somebody this entire log, and then they can get their own mushrooms as they fruit year on year.
That's crazy. So it's kind of like a waste-free Bunnings kit.
It is. Yeah,
That's
because
cool.
I mean, you could use this as your garden hedging or your around your vegetable patch, and then every now and again you get the fruit or the mushrooms, and then when it's fully used up by the mushrooms, it will be a lot lighter from what it was originally because all the wood's been eaten, and then that will just return to compost quite quickly.